I was even looking at my phones. Even then, like between like budget phones, like this one's a Motorola G Power, the screen is plastic, right? But on a more premium device like the S22, S23, I've got an old Note 5. It's all Gorilla Glass. I've never thought about putting anything on these screens. But these cheaper phones, they do get micro scratches and wear marks, and the sensors start to go after a couple years, and that would alleviate
something
that
interesting.
issue.
Something interesting I learned about Gorilla Glass, which I read it in passing, so it's not something I can completely verify. Evidently, for so many years there, it was like either your front screen cracks very easily or it scratches very easily. And so what I read was that the ingredients that they used to make the glass, it kind of varied depending on generations of phones. And it was a very fine line between making the ingredients to where it makes it resistant to scratches, but very delicate when you dropped it, or it did it from shattering when you dropped it, but it made it easier to scratch. So it seems like there was a very fine line. Now I can't go into detail. I don't know the ins and outs of modern screens for the brand new phones that just came out, so they may have gotten better at balancing that, but at least previously that was a big concern.
Yeah, and even
very interesting.
Even my older phones, like I said, my Note 5, I've got the OtterBox, I think it was the commuter case, and on my S22, I think it's also the commuter case, and I was noticing the bezel lift. Yeah. On the outsides, it's much more prominent than on the sides because this has the curved screen. So I was kind of looking at this, and the more I was looking at it, it's like, that's not really protected. I mean, if you hit it at the right angle, it still can be scratched or cracked. But
yeah, that was something I thought about. When Samsung was first trying to make use of those OLED screens, and they were making the curved screens where it was curved on the edges. And that was something, I never had one, but that was something I always wondered, was like, how the heck are you going to put a case on there that kind of protects the screen on all sides, especially from dropping,
Yeah, the S22, I will say, at least with this case, if I'm like seeking a play track or something, I can't always get it to restart perfectly. I kind of have to hold my finger at that point or something like that. The S23, the curve is not as prominent, so it feels a lot flatter when it's in the case, but there is still a curve to it if you take this off. But they've done a decent job of it. But to your point too, with stick-on screen protectors, I got one from a Nintendo Switch. Mine doesn't go in and out of the dock a lot, but because the main screen on it is a plastic or a polymer type of protectant on the actual LCD, mine's not the OLED. If you take it in and out of the dock, you actually get wear marks because there's little bumpers that keep it centered.
Yeah.
So I bought an aftermarket glass stick-on piece, so that way I don't get those wear marks. But didn't even think about the adhesive on there. I should check that.
Yeah, I did. I got one of those types of screen protectors for my Switch. It kind of came with it, just from a bundle deal that I had. And it does frustrate me because it is not on there exactly centered. So I see that every time. There's also a little piece on there where it's just bubbled up just enough where you can see it's not flush. It's a little opaque compared to everything else. Thankfully, it's in a small, tiny corner, and also thankfully, I don't ever play it outside of the dock, but it's there. I know it's there. It's me. I do have to say, when it comes to phone cases, I'm really annoyed that we have to use them, because as I was taking off the original case for my Flip and putting this thing on, I like this case. It looks good. I like it a lot more than I thought I was going to. Not that I didn't like the look of it before, but as I've been using it, it's really nice. It's hefty. It feels like I'm using a piece of equipment instead of a luxury device. However, as I took the previous case off and looked at the phone, it's so freaking pretty.
Yeah, I always think about how most of us always use phone cases, and then the designer, which is so proud of his work that it got released and it's a success, and everyone is covering up.
Yeah, but I mean, the design is beautiful, and that's fine when all is well and good. But you drop the thing, and no one cares what the design is.
I know it's a
And
necessity.
I am 100% with you, Chris.
It's a necessity. It's
Exactly.
something you got to do. It just sucks that they make these things so pretty and they look so good. And I was looking at it, I was like, man, this is just the design of the back on here, and everything was so pretty. And like,
Yeah, it's just
covered up.
It's just a macro unfortunate situation.
Right. Well, it's like I explained, before. There are knobs and dials, right? That you got to twist. Like if you turn the knob this way, well, the dial's going to move down. You can't have I want this and I want this and I want that. Most of us can't have that, right? We can't replace the device like that.
Here's the compromise. We know the vast majority of people are going to be putting cases on these things and covering up the design, but stop putting so much money into the aesthetic design of it and put more money into the hardware design,
durability,
durability, software.
Yeah, it's like incorporating the protection aspect of the case right from the design of the phone itself.
Yeah, what would you call it? The frame, the chassis. I say chassis, and maybe that's overstating it, but I think like in terms of car, like the actual body itself would seem to make the most amount of sense. Honestly, Mr. Ego, that's not too far from what I feel like when someone shows or a company or anybody says, "Oh, look at my new phone." I'm like, I'm not saying they are all the same. I'm not saying they all look the same. Certainly there are differences, but for the most part, when I see the hardware, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's neat, but I'm going to put a case on it because itself, on its own, it's fine. It's great. Like but see, like the back of this phone, matte finish, the back of this case, matte finish. So I'm like, well, I'm not really missing anything apart from the logo that I'm not really paying for, So
my pixel designs, you can barely see the color of the phone that I chose, which was that mint.
I love that.
The fingerprint sensor.
The fingerprint sensor
is the only one that's on.
I remember the fingerprint sensor on the back. God, that takes.
That's why I went from the 1 to the 5. I 2, 3, 4 all sucked, but one of the things I really love was the rear fingerprint sensor on here, because I just take it from my pocket, put my finger on it, it's already open by the time I bring it out.
That's funny.
I do like this. The fingerprint sensor is the power button on here, which is I do like it. It's nice, but I do kind of miss the back fingerprint sensor.
Totally understandable. Thank you, Goat, for covering that. I'm sure it gives plenty of people food for thought. I'm sure everybody's got an opinion on it. Like, well, I like this and I like that. That's great. It's you
can like whatever you want.
Conversation. Exactly. It's your phone. That's why I don't get. I understand the wars of Android versus iOS, or this one versus that one. I'm like, make your choice. Give us informed opinions. Give us options or things that we need to consider before we get the next one, right? And so that, I feel, is the most fruitful part of this particular discussion. So I appreciate that, Mr. Ego.